the bunch of hungry and enthusiastic startups here. So very happy to be here. Uh, Been with the payment industry for about 25 years, and what I really want to bring down today on the uh, table is my experience of the go-to-market. Being there involved with banks, payment companies. I work with FSS right now, and I'm driving the global business for all the B2B and the SaaS products. Or maybe I can start. So let me, before when I actually wanted to come here and speak about GTM, I thought let me first start with asking 2 or 3 questions so that I really get to know as to what is your understanding of GTM. GTM, in a way, it's a very simple term, go to market. It's easy to understand. But what is your understanding if I have to ask you, let's say, if a perfect product can sell by itself, maybe you can say yes or no. A perfect product, a good product, can it sell by itself? Do you think a GTM strategy, because when you actually look at GTM, most of us would believe it's all about sales and marketing. So is it only about sales and marketing? Yeah, it's a lot of elements. And the last thing which I have learned over a period of time is GTM a one-time exercise or it's iterative? It's ongoing. Yeah, so perfect. So I think that makes my job easy. Yeah. Thank you. New year for me? I don't know, I'm Marwadi. Think about it anyways. Thanks a lot. so, so, uh, so there are a couple of things when I look back and look at my experience of GTM. So I'll tell you a couple of examples, and what I really want to do is share my own experience. So look back when we actually launched our payment gateway business. We launched our debit card management system. And I think one thing which is very clear and which is very evident is that GTM is just not about some checklist. It is just not about saying or announcing that we have arrived. And now it's more easy. Earlier it wasn't that easy. You had to actually do a big PR, go to public, press. But now it's much more easy. Anytime you open up your social media, you can still write, we have arrived, we have launched. But it's not GTM. GTM is just not about saying that you have arrived. And you might announce the launch maybe at the MVP level or maybe at a PMF level. But then GTM is far more than that. So GTM, in my opinion, is very clearly when you are able to translate the value of your product to the right set of customers and to the right process. And those right is very important. Right set of customers through the right process. And I think that's where the GTM really means something, to your organization or to your business. Now, once you do that, and once you actually get the right set of value being communicated, being translated, and the customer accepts your value proposition, and you go through the right process, but which really doesn't mean, which I asked, the question which I asked, that it doesn't mean that it's a one-time activity. You always have to keep looking out, keep getting the feedback, and always iterate your GTM strategy. So I think this is the starting point. I'll share something which is very close to my heart. We launched our product called FSS Blaze. It's going miles now, but what we really and went to the journey is something which I want to share with you. FSS has been almost about 35-year-old company in payment industry. We launched we were the first one to launch the ATM managed services long back, about I think 35 years back. We were the first one to start the services for the banks. We used to support banks to manage their base 24 operations. We used to support banks for, their card operations. So that is how we started. Then in about 2003-04, we realized that we should really move up the ladder, and we should look at, from being a service company, we should really become a product company. 2003-04, we started launching products, debit card management system, prepaid. We launched the IMPS, which is now, the UPI. So we launched several products. We launched the recon management system. So all those products when we started launching in 2003, 4, 5, 6. And then, obviously we went through the journey, the product improvisation, and all that continued till about 2023. So it was a long journey on the product life cycle. And we realized that, most of the banks, so today, just to give you some numbers, out of almost about 1,000 million debit cards, 800 million debit cards are being managed on our system. So, so that was a kind of acceptance from the market, and that was the kind of growth we achieved. And in 2023, we realized that we should really ask ourselves, is it good enough? Because we were market leader, and we still are market leader, But at that point of time, we thought, is it good enough? Or do we really need to do more for our banks? And this was also a time, 2023, where banks were also looking out to become more digitally transformed. And we actually went back to the drawing board and said, okay, fine, let's understand what is that the bank would need. Because they have our debit card management system, they have got our switch, they have got our payment gateway, they have got our recon system, what else we can offer? And so, so obviously the question was, we continue to be a product company, we continue to revive our products, bring more features, functionality based on, we embed AI into the products. So I think that was obviously a very clear choice. But then we started going to our banks, we started asking them as to what is their plans. And with some research, primary, secondary, we realized that there are 3 or 4 pertinent problems which is there in the banking ecosystem. One is to do with the fragmented technology at the back end. These technologies have been quite old, 30 years old, 25 years old. So those are the legacy technology problem. Second is that the bank really, even today, most of the banks really don't have a very clear 360-degree view of the customer. They don't really have a common platform where they can unify all the processes and all the technology. And to scale up, and especially when the time is of the digital growth, we thought that's an opportunity. And probably from product, we can move towards a platform company and become a payment platform company. And then we started working towards building our platform. We invested millions of dollars in building that payment platform. We started our GTM planning right from the primary and secondary research when we finished. And the whole plan was that what we'll offer as a value proposition would be a low-code, no-code platform, would be a platform which is built on microservices, a platform which has got all the API gateways, and a platform which is a cloud-native platform. So that was the value proposition. We said, where should we go? We said we already have large banks, mid-sized bank, but mid-sized bank are the one which will really want to digitally scale much faster than the large banks. Large banks have their own complexities. So let's go to mid-sized bank and the small banks, and let's also go to neobanks, because they are the one who will really take up our platform and be able to build something on it. So we started going to these banks, and it took almost about 8 or 9 months. We really could not crack anything. And there was, obviously for the mid-sized private banks, small banks, the idea was that even without too much of the RFP process, even too much of the process in terms of onboarding, it would be easy. But 8, 9 months, we really could not achieve anything. And it was sort of a disaster for us because we invested to our investors and board. We invested almost about 150 crores on building this platform. We went back to our drawing board, started thinking about it. Is there something which we are doing wrong? And it took almost about 2-3 months for our team to really understand as to where are we going wrong. Because we are market leader, we understand payments. And I keep saying this, between us and the other companies, it's always that we understand payments, probably we don't understand marketing. The other companies are the one which understand marketing, but they don't really understand payments. So we were confident about our payment domain. And then we started realizing that there's something wrong which we are doing, maybe, and that's where the iteration of GTM comes in. So the first thing what we changed ourselves is that we moved away from the feature-based selling to the outcome-based selling. So then we started talking about, with our platform, you can have a better GTM. You can cut down your go-to-market by almost about 1/3. With our platform, your whole total cost of ownership will come down by almost about 30%. With our platform, you will become more agile. You don't really have to customize. It's more modular in nature. So which means that you can actually build something very fast on our platform. And that was the language which banks started understanding. So it was completely a change in the value proposition, the way you pitch. And then we also said, let's not go to the mid-sized bank, let's not go to the smaller banks, let's not go to the private banks, let's go to our top 5 customers. Then we went to all our top 5 customers, and the whole idea, the genesis behind this thought was that if we go to the top 5 customers, and if they get us on board, one is that we build credibility. Second is that they will push us very hard to reach to their complexity level, and which will actually make our product far more better. And with this top 5 banks, obviously we'll be able to then expand, further outside India as well. And as we speak, then the first bank which we cracked was SBI. So we have SBI on board on our platform, and which is a large bank, a difficult bank to get in. But I think our storyline completely changed, which helped us. Our target segment was completely changed, which helped us. Because when we went to this bank and we realized that they have a different problem. And their problem is something which can be addressed really well with what we are pitching. And also one important change in the sales strategy which we did is that we said we'll land and expand. So when we started talking about our platform, we realized that while we say that TCO can come down, the GTM can come down, but I think we'll still start with something which we already have with them, which is a debit card management system. So we said we'll upgrade your debit card management system, which is already built with all the new features and functionality on our platform today. And that really triggered. Because it was easy for them to decide. It was easy for them to decide whether the existing debit card management system can be upgraded, and that comes along with the platform, and the platform has got so many features. And so that's where we really changed the way we started selling. And today, as we speak, we got SBI, we got about 10 contracts in India. We expanded in Middle East, South Africa, where we were already present. But now we have got a good penetration of our Blaze platform across these regions. And that's where I would say that even after 30 years of our market leadership position, we always believe that GTM is something which needs to keep, changing, which you always need to keep thinking about. So coming from this example and just trying to put down some elements which in my opinion are very important, is one is that target market. Now, there can be two ways. One is that you might decide to have your product and solution and then look out for a target market, which is not bad, but which is difficult. The other way is that you find your target market, understand them, and then build your products or solutions. If we have to take an example of Meesho. Now, Meesho, they launched themselves in 2016, I believe. And obviously, Flipkart was there, Amazon was there. Cluttered market when it comes to the marketplace. But what they did right, that they focused on rural women, they focused on the semi-urban and rural women, and those people, those folks who wanted to earn for themselves, but they didn't have really too much available to invest. So very clear target segment, which was very different from what Amazon was doing or Flipkart was doing. The value proposition was very clear. You don't have to invest. You don't have to hold inventory. Meesho will manage everything for you. What you just need to do is promote or put a catalog on the WhatsApp. Messaging positioning again was very clear that if I remember it right, मेरी अपनी दुकान है mobile पे. So that was a kind of messaging, which means a complete empowerment. The message was that we are empowering all of you, and this is a platform where you feel empowerment, where you feel where you actually so that platform actually enabled the micro entrepreneurship. Channel strategy. They started with WhatsApp. For a long time, they continued with WhatsApp, and anybody can actually create a catalog, put it on WhatsApp. They would send a payment link on the WhatsApp. You can click the link, select product, pay on the WhatsApp. So it was very clear channel strategy, very clear communication strategy, pricing, packaging, no-frill packaging. And today, if you look at Meesho, if my numbers are right, Meesho still is profitable now. And Meesho is almost about 7,000-8,000 top line. Whereas if you look at Flipkart, it could be about 20,000, Amazon could be about 25,000-30,000, but they still are running into losses. So I think this is, I really like to look, how Meesho has taken up the GTM strategy. Now, this is what I call it as a taking charge of your business, which is a TC model. On one side, on the right-hand side, you see T's, and on the other side, you see all the C's. So if you look at the first element, in my opinion, which is important, and with all the businesses, and I'm sure you'll resonate, the team is very important. And you need to really understand the strength of your team. You need to understand what is that they can deliver. You need to understand how much they can stretch. So I think when you plan your GTM strategy, it's very important to understand what team are you working with. Also, it is important to understand whether all this team is aligned. So when we launch our product, and we always make it sure that right from CFO, to the technology guy, to the marketing, to the product, and to the sales, everyone, and the operation, everyone is aligned and everyone signs off with the GTM strategy. In fact, I have been following this for quite some time now, which is an Amazon strategy, that when you start talking and thinking about a product or a solution which you need to launch, we have to first write down, and that's what my team does together, we first write down as to what will be our PR when we actually announce the go live. And that's what I learned from Amazon long back. And I like that. So team is important. TAM obviously important. We all know. We need to very clearly know which is the target market we are focusing on and what's the size of the market. If I have to give you an example, let's look at Country Delight. Now, Country Delight, if you look at the market size, that's pretty big. I think it's about 80, 90 billion of market, where it's a milk product market, and 80, 90 billion is a big market, because if you look at an e-commerce market, that by itself is about 150 billion market. Uh, so it's a big market. So definitely, which makes sense. It's a big market. Everybody, it's a recurring transaction. The market is scalable because you can switch from Doodhwala to the more packaged milk products. So I think, so if you look at the time when Country Delight started, they started with an objective that's a big market. But I think it took almost about 10 years for them to reach to almost about 1,500, 1,600 crores of revenue. Even though knowing that the market is really large, so which means that you really need to understand what the TAM means. And then I'll come to, why TAM needs to still drill down a little bit. Timing is important. Now you always can say, how would we judge timing? And for sure. But I think there is some science we'll have to put when we talk about timing of launching a product. But then there are times when timing actually runs in your favor. I still remember November 8, 2016, I was coming from Delhi. In the same time I landed, and I suddenly hear a lot of buzz on the mobile phone. Everybody's mobile phone is ringing. You realize that the 500,000, 2,000 currency is not legal anymore. And cut to 10th November, I see a big paper ad from Paytm, which is just cut this QR code, put it on your shop, and you can start accepting payments. And I think that agility of making sure that if there is a timing which works in your favor, and that agility is very important. So I would say that timing is important. Maybe if you can judge the timing right based on whatever factors, but even if the timing comes in your way, which favors you, I think that agility is very important. And I really remember that Paytm example, and you see where the Paytm is today. A QR code they launched in 2015. 1 year they were struggling, because there is a cost of acquisition which is very high. You have to go to a customer, put up the QR code, you have to convince them. But that one thing completely changed Paytm. Tech stack, again, when we look at the GTM, I think tech stack, our ability to scale, our ability to handle concurrency, our ability to manage downtime, everything needs to be understood. Now, not maybe a very appropriate example, but you look at the UPI. The UPI nobody really thought that we'll touch about 15 billion, 16 billion transactions in a month. But now what has happened? The growth of UPI is much faster than what they could have done to upgrade their system, upgrade their technology. Now today, NPC has come back saying that these APIs cannot be used, statistic APIs cannot be used, you cannot do more transactions like this. And then there are some restrictions which has been put around to make sure that the technology is stable. And we have seen some outages happening in the last 5-6 months on the UPI. So which means that technology, even to the extent of a company like NPCI, which is exploding in terms of transaction, but I think that's where I say the technology, assessment of your technology is very important when you actually do GTM. Maybe you have your pessimistic, your realistic, your optimistic scenario. And based on that, you should really understand as to whether the technology will support all that growth. And then, obviously, traction. So traction is pretty simple to understand. So when you build your GTM plan, it is also important to understand as to what traction you want to build on and what is the expected outcome of the traction. Where do you want to build? So let's say dream level. The whole traction has been built around IPL. And now if you see, dream level, it's very well resonated with, IPL and the cricket, and they have built the business on that traction. So you need to understand as to what traction we need to build, and that should be the real plan on your GTM strategy. Now coming to competition, so most of us, we all understand that there is a competition out there. We all understand that we have to assess competition. It's not whatever I'm talking here is not a rocket science. But what I realize is, and having worked with so many marketing, product, sales team, everybody understands this. But then in some way they would ignore. So even competition, when you see competition, you'll say, my product is good, my target segment is different, competition can't hurt me, and I keep hearing those statements. We don't compete. Those kind of statements I keep hearing on the forums. We don't compete. We have a different niche. We have a different market. But I think it's very important to understand what your competition is. And more from a point of view as to where they will go in the next couple of years. Because it's just not about what they are doing now, it's more about what they will do tomorrow. So I think that's important. Then again, customers, let me take the same example of the customer delight. Now, if you look at it, TAM about 70, $80 billion industry. But if you look at the serviceable available market, which is much lesser, because when they started only with Noida and Delhi, so which was much lesser. When you look at the obtainable market, which is far more lesser, because those are the people which actually have started using the one which understand technology, they can order on the app, willing to pay premium for the milk. So now having understood what is the real customer for, let's say, customer delight, what they have done, they have understood their customer. Now, basis their understanding on the demographics, the choice, the culture, now they are getting into the cross-sell and the, so now they started getting into fruits, vegetables. And that's where your GTM strategy will come in, when you don't really stop yourself at TAM, but also go deeper down into how your customers are looking like. Yes, company. I think somewhere, probably not in a chronology, but I think company should be first, because you have to really know what your company is all about. And especially, coming from a companies where I work with public listed companies, working with a company we want, which is about to go, which will go public. So it's important for us to understand as to what is the company all about. And it's not really only about your people. It's not only about your colleagues. It's not only about, your strength from the customers. It's also about, overall investors, their mindset. It's also about your board, how they want to look at the business. So you really need to understand as to what is the appetite available. And I think so assessing or introspection of your own company is very important. Call it SWOT analysis. And then climate, which is your regulatory environment, or the parameters on the economical side, political side. So those climate also needs to be understood well. Let me just think of an example on the climate. So let's say if you heard about companies like Slice, they were all into a prepaid card business. They used to offer credit. And then there was this regulation which came, which strictly stopped them to offer any credit on the PPI license which they had. And those companies actually have been struggling, after this regulation came in. So the regulations needs to be understood well. Like DPTP, somebody was asking about DPTP. Lot will change after DPTP comes, more effectively. And then collaborators, which could be, so let's say, for example, on a B2B side, we try and partners with lot of this ISVs and ISOs to sell our product. Collaboration as to where do you want to collaborate, which partner you want to collaborate with, whether it is, and then obviously what is the commercial model with the collaborators. So I think those things are very important for you to understand. So if you look at all this, about 10 elements, I think getting into too much of detail, understanding will probably help you deliver a better GTM strategy. I covered the elements, and then let me just talk about a couple of pitfalls and generally where we can go wrong. Broad targeting. So I was just going through some articles. So let's say today, if you look at for Uber, all those people who travel is the market. But is that the way Uber would want to promote? Because let's say, example of Mumbai, people who really travel by train are not really Uber customers. So while you see that market looks broader, but then you still have to figure out as to which is the market, and that's how you will have to target the market. On the technical, this is very relevant to our old, the way we used to sell. We used to sell technology, which didn't work. So you have to sell outcome. And then somebody was talking about outcome-based pricing, and I think that's what is really working well in the B2B SaaS industry. Then over-reliance on single channel and ignoring post-sale experience. So these are you will find thousands of examples, but I'm just putting it down here because in normal transactional way of thinking, we still would miss out and we would still do all these mistakes. Let's say you look at Niemann's and all this, Mokobara, now they have started coming on the physical side of the business, on the physical stores. And they started off with the online channel. So you will have to change and you will have to understand your customer, you will have to keep changing. And you can't be very rigid about single channel. And look at Ola scooter as an example on the post-sale experience. They did everything right. they had a good brand equity, they did everything right, they launched good product, they had good sales, but now look at the post-sale experience. Probably they did not really understand the customer experience well. So I think these are 4 or 5 things which are very important when you have a GTM strategy in place, when you implement, and then you figure out that you should probably validate whether you are making mistakes or not. I'll skip this. This is more on FSS, and I'll keep the AI FSS product for later. Just to sum up, and I would say the checklist, some of the important points which you always need to question, and question yourself, your team. Clarity on the strategy, whether the target segment is fine, defined right, value proposition, marketing and positioning. So all this, I'll put it up for your reading, but it's important that you have a very clear checklist available. And this is not exhaustive. This is more based on, what, I have been following. But it can be far more exhaustive. It can be far more based on the TC model which I spoke about. But I think it's important to really understand the strategy to the execution from my side. Thank you.
I heard you say that you mentioned somewhere where banks do not have 360 view of their customers. And then you mentioned about SBI and debit card, the debit card management. And so just understanding what is this 360 view bank doesn't have, in terms of the MIS, in terms of the...
Just trying to understand this 360 degree, what is this 360 degree view the bank doesn't have? And sir, just to add on, the SBI debit card, the management which you said you handle, is there any instance where probably this, the debit card has not worked, or maybe the payment link has not worked, or maybe, I went to a debit card, ATM to withdraw through my debit card and I was not able to withdraw the money?
There could be many instances where it will not work, but that's because more of the ecosystem, if you look at it, there are various stakeholders in the ecosystem, right from the ATM, when you talk about ATM, the ATM managed services player, to the switch, to the, the NFS. So there are various players involved in the entire transaction chain. Somewhere something might get affected, so that's possible. So but that doesn't really mean that, the debit card has not worked because of the SBI, because of the whole ecosystem, which is maybe outside SBI. So coming to your question on 360 degree view, let's say today you have a SBI credit card, you have a SBI debit card. Are you viewed as one customer? You have got loans from SBI, you have got home loans from SBI, or maybe you've got Demat account with SBI Securities, I don't know. So are you looked upon as a one single customer? Now it's difficult. While bank wants to do that, it's not that bank doesn't want to do that. Sir from IDBI is there. Obviously, they would want to look at all the customers together, look at how you can profile, score your customer. But then there are obvious challenges which are backed by the challenges of technology. So, things are moving in those directions. And we want to be a catalyst so that we can actually help banks to, bring everything together.
So, your presentation covered, mostly it was for the higher strategy. Like you said, you'll build a platform and then you'll target the big 5 banks, right? Mm-hmm. So what would be your inputs to startups? Because normally startups do not, or may not be focusing on only the top 5. It might be some in the middle layer or even in the lower layer. So what is your inputs? What kind of strategy, GTM strategy, which should startups have? What is it that you would advise us?
It's a very general statement, but it depends on what your startup is all about. And which areas you want to focus on, what is that you want to do, what is your strength on your product and solution. But for me, it's difficult to answer that way. But I would say a starting point should be a good primary and secondary research. That should be a good starting point. You should very clearly know as to, and those 10 things which I spoke about, you should really come out very clearly if you have answers for all those elements. And if you have answers for all those, then obviously you are clear in your thought process. But if you don't have answers, then you obviously need to find out, and maybe you need to change or, iterate your strategy. But very difficult for me to answer like this unless you tell me as to what startup you're talking about and which segment. But generally, I would say there has to be a very thorough research which needs to happen much before even you think of any MVP. So that is my response here.